Well, hello there. Good day, good morning, good evening, good night, wherever you're in the world. Hope you are doing well. Taylor and I are back with page chewing. Yes, it's been a bit of a hiatus, a bit of an absence, but we are so pleased to be back in 2026. And come on, like, you want to talk about level up coming back in 2026? Look at our guests, folks. Look at who we've brought. None other than Mr. BellTube, new audiobook king. We're gonna find out about all things that he's up to, but he's up to a lot. One of the nicest, most genuine, most inspiring, and yet humble people on YouTube or BookTube. Someone who we all respect and we all love interacting with, and we're so grateful to have him as part of our space. Um, Mr. Brian Bell, welcome, sir. How are you?
I'm awesome. This is just completely cool. I've wanted to be on your show for as long as the show has existed. You two are two of my favorite, just general human beings in the book space. So I'm really excited to talk with you guys. This will be a fun conversation. I guess if people are totally unaware of me, I'm Brian. Last name is Bell. That's why the channel's name called BellTube. And I cover a lot of fantasy books and some science fiction. I cover quite a bit more lit RPG genre than most of the other fantasy booktubers out there because I greatly enjoy it. And my tastes range everything from Malazan, which I just finished, all the way down to some of the most basic popcorn reads possible and everything in between. And my channel, I just try to have a good time with. I think there's always better channels out there for in-depth analysis, but I think people might enjoy my channel just because there's a certain energy level that is a little bit more, let's just say, higher level than some of the other book channels. And if you like high energy stuff, that's what I like to do.
Wow. Well, I know that I certainly appreciate and love and get a real lift from watching your channel, Brian. I've always been curious. Um, are you naturally that energetic, that enthusiastic? Is that something that's over time? Is that something you said, you know what, I got to channel my inner energy because I'm going to do this booktube thing? Where does that come from?
Well, I think my personality is an entertainer just in general, whether it be just is in a conversation with one person or whether it be through a big booktube event or whatever. I was an actor growing up in junior high school and high school. I've been in bands my whole life, and I've always loved performing. And for whatever reason, we all have our different skills and inherent traits, and mine have just kind of fallen into this kind of higher energy entertainer type of a role. Sure, when I'm just sitting around the house reading a book, no, I'm not banging on the table all excited, doing characters and all of that. I'm a normal human being. But because of the fact that I grew up as, like I said, kind of a musician and on stage, and then later in life went on to own and operate a nightclub for 15 plus years, that has brought out that side of my personality. So it was really easy for me to start this booktube endeavor from a comfortability standpoint. Not so much that I knew how to edit videos or how to film myself or equipment or lighting or any of that. I knew something about sound because of the nightclub years, but when that red light on the camera button goes on, I just bounce right into entertainer mode. And it's literally something I've had since I was probably in kindergarten. So the child who barely grew up, kind of, as I'm
I
moving
feel
this
like a lot of us on YouTube probably understand and feel those same sentiments because you have to have a certain level of that to get behind a camera, I think, willingly and frequently, right? But I always found it interesting that you have this nightclub outgoing persona, even in your videos. It's what a lot of people come for. I think you're very charismatic. But then your hobby is this quiet reading hobby, right?
Yeah.
So do you find that work well together? Those two hobbies, do you find, or
Yeah,
like what are your,
absolutely.
what's your
Yeah,
feelings about
absolutely. I
that?
mean,
Yeah.
when I talk about high energy and just kind of the person that I am, it does take energy to be high energy. And while that kind of sounds obvious, it's very true. So when you get out of that mode, especially when I had the stuff going on, because that was a constant, not like turn on a camera for YouTube for 20 minutes a week and call it a day. That was on basically under a spotlight all the time, being really high energy. And then, yeah, so books fit great into that because it was the release, it's the pressure valve of all of that kind of opening up, and use my mind a little bit more and physically relax a lot more. One of the things that I was so excited about when you invited me to come on the channel was actually the time of the day that we're doing this live, because when I do evening streams, I get crazy insomnia because I'm just wired up from talking to fellow booktubers. So like this is like perfect because now I'm going to have all evening to just read and decompress and all that. So to answer your question in kind of a long way, Taylor, yeah, I think that reading for me has always been my getaway. I started reading really, really young, and fantasy in particular. And so, yeah, that's the decompressing time. Even if it's darker, traumatic material or not a popcorn read, it's still been that pressure release for sure.
I feel that in my bones as a fellow extrovert. Before we move on to another question,
Yeah,
I just wanted to
cool.
pop up a couple of the comments here real
Yeah.
quick, which is, so we have a hi from Croatia.
Hello,
Thanks
Stepan.
for joining us. Apparently an OG fan of yours, Brian.
I got to tell you, Stepan has been literally since our first video that came out. Stepan commented on it, and I just was so blown away by the reach of YouTube, because here's this guy in Croatia drinking his Turkish coffee, watching my video. And he sent me some of his books. He's also an author, and I've enjoyed some of what I've read of his books so far. PL, don't get offended. Stepan's books are much shorter. So they're novella size, at least the one that I read, The Black Seeds. So yeah, Stepan's been there a long time. He's a really good, nice guy.
Yeah. I think the more that I do YouTube in general, but especially page chewing, you realize how important the community aspect is. It really is the only thing that matters. So I just love to see when those connections last throughout, because I have people like that too. And I know PL does as well. Actually, well, PL and I's relationship is from that, right? Yeah. So I'm so glad that you're in the comments. Thank you for stopping by. And then I also wanted to put up, I think, a mutual friend of all of ours, Mr. Chatting with Nuts. Jimmy is here. Brian is a big fan of pedicures. I feel like that has a story.
Well, yeah. So sometimes when Jimmy goes to get his pedicures, he will like to send me basically video where it'll be going on, and he'll be directing the pedicurist exactly the color and the shade that he enjoys. And yeah, it's fascinating. Jimmy is a multi-talented individual.
That he is. And thank you, Jimmy. I'm doing my best to thrive.
Oh, we got Jared there too, eh?
Taddy is here. Yep, Jared's here as well. Fantasy Thinker. So we have so many wonderful people in the chat. Thank you so much to everyone for coming back after our long hiatus. I know the algorithm sometimes is not friendly when you take a long break. So just thank you for being here. And I just can't wait to interact with you guys going forward. Before we move on to the books though, or your big audiobook news, I did have a couple more questions about content making itself.
Sure.
Something that's really interesting that I've seen you do on your channel in recent months is not edit. And I know PL does this too. So I would like to actually pass this off to the both of you, because PL is the master of just going live and just reviewing something and then one and done. So I am not, however, that's not a skill of mine. I like to edit. So I'm curious, knowing that this is a goal of yours, does that affect how you film, how you set up? Because you used to edit a lot. So I'm
Mhm.
wondering if that's changed anything in your prep.
You know, I still like editing. It's not that I dislike doing it. It's mostly kind of a time thing for me because when I want to do something, I want to do it. And so if I'm going to put out an edited video, I want it to look like, hey, I put some effort into the editing, which for me can take anywhere from 4 to 7 or 8 hours, depending on how involved I want to get. Now, somebody like Bookborn will spend 100 hours editing, a 15-minute video. I don't have the mental wherewithal or capacity to do that. But still, if I were to go put 4 to 8 hours into editing, that's basically an entire work day. And I asked the community, what do you guys like better? Do you like the edited videos that I do? Or do you prefer more of a one-on-one conversational type of a tone that, PL will do, or Philip will do, or Mike from Mike's Book Reviews will do? And it was slightly ahead of the winner of that poll actually was the unedited videos. They felt like they were getting more of an authentic, in real time, even though it's pre-recorded, take on my thoughts. And I don't cut anything out. I'm very lucky in that I can do things in one take. And that is maybe just from a lifetime of being a performer. And just knowing the gist of what I want to get across in under a half an hour, if possible. And so the editing side of that became, I'm not cutting anything out. I'm not, maybe I'm changing some volumes here or there if I move my head and the microphone went in or out a little bit. But other than that, and maybe flashing some books if I'm listening to them on audio or on ebook that I don't have to hold up, I'll edit that in. But realistically speaking, like from a booktuber's perspective, I get no more or less views on my channel, whether I edit videos or not. And then it kind of comes down to, well, what's this video actually doing? Is it just a wrap-up video or is it something specific? And if it's something more specific, like when I've done things like, 4 books that feel like an action movie or something like that, then I'm more likely to go in and do a bunch of editing because it makes more sense for the video. But if I'm just talking about books that I'm going to read or books that I just wrapped up reading, for me, it's the value of, is this adding anything of substance to this presentation? And if it's just not really, and people seem to like that one-on-one type of hanging out at the end of a bar, just shooting the breeze and whatever, so be it. So I kind of feel like I get the best of both worlds, but lately, for just time's sake, the unedited version, thank God people aren't clicking off of it. So it's good.
Yeah, editing is brutal time-wise. What about you, PL? I know that you also take the unedited route most of the time.
Brian said it far more, in a far more articulate manner than I ever could. He hit all of the points that I would have said. My only coding thing to add is that I feel like, for example, if I do a spontaneous book review, no one cares about me. They can't, someone's going through probably searching for, Malazan or, Warzine Shadow, and then I'm one of 50, 100, 1,000 videos that show up. So you might, I think for some people, they're going, the algorithm's taking them certain places, and they're like, oh, because I do a lot of books, I think that perhaps don't have as much love, especially in the indie space. I'll do reviews for those. And so if you're looking for a review for that book, I may be one of perhaps a dozen or less reviews. So for me, because it's all about the book and the author, it's not really about me, I figure, you know what? Better for me to just get this review out as quickly, as expediently as possible, so that if someone's looking for something different, if someone is actually looking for an opinion on BookTube, not that, my opinion matters so much, but someone's looking for a review of this book, hey, there's one out there, right? So, I Brian's point about time, I mean, that one is spot on for me. And I don't have frankly, the technical expertise to edit as precise as either one of you would. My editing would be probably take me a day to properly edit some of my videos. So warts and all, coughs and clearing throats and all, and laughs and mispronounced words and whatever I do, you get me unvarnished. But because it's all about the book, it's all about talking about this book, it's all about talking about this author. And when it's an interview on Six Elementals interviews, it's just a conversation, man. And conversations, to me, a spontaneous conversation with someone that's really unscripted, that's about just two people talking. And if there's a mistake, whoop-de-doo, that happens in a regular conversation, right? You say, oh, I meant to say this, or so I love the natural, organic nature of that stuff. So yeah, that's that. But just add everything that Brian said a lot better than I said.
No. But I also think to some degree, I want what I'm putting out to be accessible to as many people as possible. And there's just a lot of people that will have a YouTube channel on and maybe the volume is cranked up, but they're in the other room doing something. So they're just listening, or maybe they're listening on their earbuds, or they're driving in their car and hearing it. And when I get real involved with the video editing part of that, a big chunk of people who are enjoying the program aren't even seeing it because they're just listening to it. So I have really found, as long as the microphone sounds pretty good, that for me is really the most important. Everything else for there is just kind of gravy on top.
You hit on such an important point there, which is the way that we consume long form media now. Because I do the same thing. I'll pop it on while I vacuum. Well, the vacuum's loud. That was a bad example. But while I do dishes or whatever it is I'm doing, right? So it is, you do have to strike that balance between how much time you put in. I do remember once my friend asked me, they were like, so how much, like what would be, if you were paid for this, what would you be being paid? And I'm like, I'm not doing that math. I don't want to know.
Yeah.
my editing time is none of my business.
Yes.
Because I don't want to do that math.
Exactly. You're not paying yourself minimum wage. You're in trouble. Absolutely.
Exactly.
So much of, I think, what we do as content creators, we're trying to reach an audience, not even so much for us, but we're talking about books. We're sharing our love for books. We're sharing our love for a particular author's writing, respect for that author themselves, their craft as a person, etc. And so much of, I feel, you can see that come out of us when it's just like raw, right? Like, especially like, just read the book. Hey, these are my thoughts. I tend to throw those ones live. So it's like if someone wants to comment, oh, I read that book, or oh, I never heard of that. Oh, maybe I'll put them on TBR. Like, I love that feeling, right? So I think that's also part of why I do that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Cool.
Before I bring up some of the comments here that are also, asking us some questions, one other thing I wanted to bring up is, you also have a live show that you do, right? For Whom the Bell Tolls.
Yeah.
Obviously, this is a live show that we are doing.
Yes.
So we know that so much effort goes into the background work of shows like this.
Yeah.
So you had mentioned in a couple recent videos, just kind of mentioned that fact. So I wanted to just ask you if there was anything you felt is a misconception or anything you feel people should know about what goes on to pull off a show like this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or
so
like Whom the Bell Tolls.
Yeah, so I look at For Whom. It's interesting that Jimmy Nuts is in the chat because I have long looked at him in this corner of BookTube as kind of the gold standard of doing the live stuff, because he can create a conversation so organically without scripted notes, without scripted questions. And when you watch his show, 90 to 120 minutes goes by like that, and it's just seamless. And so I didn't want to do exactly what he was doing because he's already great at that. There's already a Jimmy Nuts out there. What I wanted to do was come up with a way of having a live show that chat could interact with, which is sort of like in limbo right now because I'm having some debate between doing them live versus doing them pre-recorded. But in my case specifically, I've really only had on a couple of different types of guests, either booktubers themselves which are just the norm, or when I get a sponsored stream from some of the audiobook companies that I've partnered with that ask me to interview their authors and their voice actors. And regardless of which one it is, I try to do my homework far in advance of the actual live taking place, where I will go back and I will watch some of their very first videos they don't remember making in some cases. I will go back and read as much as I can from an author if there's going to be an author that's come on, because what I want essentially is 90 minutes of questioning and conversations that the booktuber or the author or the voice actor hasn't been asked on every show that they've ever been on before, that they could turn on any other live that they've ever been on, any other interview, and basically rinse and repeat. I like challenging guests with questions that no one's ever asked them before. And I think that that's what makes people interested in coming on the show. In some regard, there's a little bit of a nervous factor that people have candidly shared with me, because they have no idea what I'm going to ask them. I might ask them about a video they put out 3.5 years ago that they don't even remember making. Or I might ask them about something they did in the 4th grade that nobody's ever asked them before. And so, to answer your question, the prep work that I try to put into For Whom the Bell Tolls is why I don't have For Whom the Bell Tolls every single week. It's because it takes me far more time to go back and watch videos and write down all the questions of interest that I have about not just the books that they like, but who they are as an individual and kind of where they started, where they're at now, and where they would like to see themselves going in the future, because we can't predict it. But if you have goals and ambitions and dreams, my show is a good place to let those out, where maybe some people aren't comfortable talking about on their own channel. It's easier to talk about, personal goals and things somewhere else than on your own channel, because it doesn't seem like you're just talking about yourself so much. So that's kind of my long-winded answer on For Whom the Bell Tolls, but it definitely takes far more prep than it should sometimes. And especially because I will come to this with 3 or 4 pages of questions. And when we go off camera and we have our little backstage kind of wrap up between my guest and myself, I'll hold up the questions and say, we got to 40% of them. So we need to do an episode 2, because there's 60% of the questions that I have for you we never even got to.
Just so you know, we're here for the long-winded. Keep that coming.
Okay, cool. Well, I know what it is sometimes. Well, I know very well what it is when you're hosting and you are praying to God you get a guest that can hold a conversation. Because if it's a simple yes, no answer, it becomes a very long hour to an hour and a half. So as a guest, I feel like it's somewhat my responsibility to keep conversation flowing as well.
We were not worried about that with you whatsoever, Brian. Trust me. We were like, we can just sit back and kind of like, go on autopilot while you entertain everybody. So.
I'm an easy guest for your comeback stream. That's for sure.
There we go. Thank you for your service.
Yes.
Yeah.
I did want to ask you, Brian, I love so much about what you do. I love so much, we talked about your energy. I love so much about everything you do in this space, but I have to comment specifically on One for the Road.
Okay.
I think it's probably, if I had to rank, it's not fair because there's so many amazing booktubers and so much great content. If I had to rank the one thing that I kind of live for on BookTube, it's watching One for the Road from you.
Awesome.
And I don't always comment, but I think I've watched by now, I think I've caught up to almost every single video where One for the Road has been part of the end of your stream. And I just want to let you know personally, and I think a lot of people out there feel the same, that, you are a wonderfully inspirational person that, makes us all feel good and also gives us things to think about that I think we all need to hear. And I just want to say how much we appreciate you for that, amongst all the other wonderful things you do. can you tell us a bit about One for the Road, the genesis of One for the Road? Because I think that it's changed a bit, perhaps, just
Mhm.
my observation since you first started including it, and kind of what you are trying to accomplish with including that.
Yeah, it's an awesome question. So the One for the Road, really the genesis of it was is I was trying to think of a way to end each episode of BellTube with something that hasn't really been done before. And I thought to myself, okay, what can I bring to the table that isn't really part of anybody else's channel, where I'm not really knocking off what anybody else does? And I started to think about, well, I'm a little bit older than a lot of the book channel, BookTube personalities that I watch. I've had really different kinds of experiences in my life. I've lived in different countries. Like we talked about the nightclub stuff, I've owned different businesses. I've just done a bunch of things, and I've learned a lot of lessons kind of the hard way. And I thought to myself, book talk is great. And if somebody wants to turn on BellTube and find out what I thought about a particular book or what I'm going to be reading next month, that's terrific. But they're going to forget that by the end of the weekend, or they're going to forget it after they watch another BookTube video, whatever comes next on their feed. What can I do to let them think about something in their own lives that has nothing to do with me, that has nothing to do with my TBR or the books that I enjoy or the books that I dislike? What can I leave them with of value? Because when I started the channel and to this day, the number one goal is let's provide value to who's ever willing to tune in, whether it's just listening or whether it's watching or whatever. What gives somebody some value, saying, you know what, I'm glad I spent 20 to 30 minutes with Brian today. And the One for the Road really kind of is like questions that I have for myself many times that I will ponder and come to some questions, and questions always lead to more questions, and try to find small ways to act and to take action, where a lot of the times as human beings, we ruminate on things just forever instead of trying to find actionable solutions because they seem like they're just so far away from where we want to go. So One for the Road became, what can I impart people with that maybe is something they can think about for the rest of the day or even longer, to in some cases inspire them to do something that maybe they've put on the back burner or they've been fearful of attempting, or to make them feel like they're not alone in where their moods are, because I've done some One for the Roads about being depressed and being down and having life put twists and turns in your face that are unexpected and are devastating, and that they're not alone. There's many different facets of the One for the Road, and where I have had my own insecurities with One for the Road is that I never wanted to come across as like this dime store psychologist, right? Where, here I am giving a Tony Robbins pitch for 5 to 10 minutes after the end of a book video on how someone should live their life. I never wanted to come across that way. And I'm sure there's some detractors out there that kind of feel that, but that's okay, because the most consistent comment I get through all the videos that I've ever done, the most consistent ones are, I love the One for the Road today. I love the One for the Road today. And for me, that's sort of my why I do BookTube. I feel like I saw Philip in the chat. I feel like there are people out there, and same with UPL as well, that do a lot of book analysis, right? I feel like there's other people that's in their wheelhouse really well. And I want to let them be in their wheelhouse other than the hot tub. Yeah, that's true, Philip. But I just want to be able to give people some value. And like I said, whether it's inspirational, I just had somebody message me last week that they started a BookTube channel because they watched a One for the Road last week and they finally decided to take the plunge off of something that I said. And that's going to impact their life, and it's going to impact their viewers' life. And even if that person gets all of 0 views, they tried something outside of their comfort zone. And I think that that's kind of how we grow as people. And to get that kind of feedback inspires me to do most of it. Very rarely do I know what the one for the road is going to be more than 2 hours before the video. Very rarely. Sometimes it's 20 minutes before the video. Sometimes I change it midstream, or I'll have a little bullet point under my camera that just says one for the road, and it's usually 1 or 2 words where I know what I want to say, but it's just sort of like the general theme. And as I'm talking about something, an idea will occur to me while I'm talking, going, you know what, let's save that one for another day. This is relevant to what I just talked about. And thank you so much for noticing the one for the road. I feel like that's where, if people actually pay attention to it, they may get some value, if for no other reason than to learn from things I've messed up in my own life. And maybe it can kind of keep them on a better path than some of the dumb things I've done.
I can say, you know, from my perspective, it certainly doesn't come off soapboxy at all. It does come off as internal reflection, then expressed for others to ruminate on. So I think that internal reflection part really shows through. And, you know, to go off of what PL said as well, you've gone through phases with your one for the road, depending on where you are in your life. So I did just want to take this time to give you my condolences for your loss last year that you've been open about on your channel. Grief is non-linear and it never really leaves us. So it's just something that you have with you all the time. And I just wanted to send you, you know, love and support, and just, we see you.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah. That means a lot. You know, when my mom passed, it was very unexpected because she had had a couple of surgeries, and we were worried about the surgeries, but when all that was done, she was fine. And she just went and got a manicure and her hair done that day. And then I get a call at 4:30 in the morning that she just had a heart episode in bed and passed away in her sleep out of nowhere. And so I was just totally thrown for a loop because we thought we were totally in the clear. And I had to obviously step back from reading and step back from BookTube and all of this stuff. And it occurred to me, if there was anything my mom would be mad about, it would be if I stopped doing BookTube. Because the last time I saw my mom, I was visiting her in the hospital out in California after surgery that she had, or she was going to have. And I said, it was like on a Wednesday. And I said, and her surgery was going to be on a Saturday. And I said, Mom, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to stick around, you know, for the surgery? What do you want me to do? And she said, no, I want you to go home tonight as planned, so I have a video to watch on Friday. And I was like, okay, my mom gets me. And so after all of that, and I do appreciate your such kind wishes, I was like, the one thing that would piss my mom off the most is if I let her passing end BellTube as a channel, or put any longer of a delay on it than is reasonable. So if people notice on the end screen of all of my videos now, at the very bottom, it says "in loving memory of Mom," which is a permanent fixture now on my little end page. So thank you for noticing that. I appreciate that.
Of course. Well, I mean, that's the most beautiful answer that I could have possibly conceptualized, because the people who love us really do want the best for us, right? So, yeah. And, you know, going through an experience like that does change you. And reading is also a very subjective experience. So I was wondering if you could think of any book or any series or any author that you feel might shift upon reread after having gone through the life experiences that you have. For example, for me, I read Jade Legacy, or the Greenbone Saga, so Jade City, Jade War, Jade Legacy, twice now. But all of that was before I was a mother. And after becoming a mother, that series is very about family, right? And connection, familial connections. And I feel like I would read that series extremely differently now because that experience has changed me. So I'm wondering, you know, do you have anything that pops into your head where you think, oh, that I might read that differently now based on.
Yeah. And it's interesting because it's almost like, in some regard, almost an opposite, in that I wouldn't go back and reread them, because I've, you know, for a while, and probably still right now, I have to think about it because I just finished Malazan, but for the longest time, The Realm of the Elderlings has been at the top of my favorite fantasy series of all time. And I was just talking about it with some friends this morning, that I don't know if I could go back and reread that, at least in the headspace that I've been in for the last year, because the main character goes through so much trouble and misery that I feel like it might bring my IRL emotions that, like you said, grief isn't linear. Some days are great, some are less so, that it would almost feel like, as much as I love those books, and like I said, they're at the very top of my fantasy list, I don't know that I would have a great time with them the same way that I did prior to being, hit with such a devastating personal loss. It's a little, and it kind of felt like that with Malazan, because all of this happened prior to me. Well, I was up until about, I want to say, Midnight Tides, before my mom passed. And, the next book was fine. And the next book was fine. But when I got to Toll the Hounds, which, if any of y'all haven't read it, it's about a 400,000 word treatise on grief, because Stephen Erickson wrote it right after his father passed away. And it was just so viscerally real to me that it was just almost too much. But the weird thing about that series is that I didn't want to put it down for too long, because I suspected, and probably correctly, that I would forget way too much if I put 6 months between me and, the last book. So I just kind of pushed through it. But having had grief experiences makes me really reluctant to go back and reread things that grief and emotional trauma is at the forefront of what the story is. And some of those are the most compelling stories in the world. And, Realm of the Elderlings is phenomenal. I can't recommend it enough, unless you're just going through grief, because that can be kind of tricky too. It's for the same reason that I just put off 12 Months by Jim Butcher. I've been a Dresden Files fan literally since day one. Since Stormfront came out, for the most part, I've been current with that series. And I listened to one paragraph of the audiobook last Tuesday, because I was like all fired up. This book came out in January and my TBR was too big, and I'm finally getting to it now. And James Marsters, who's the voice actor on the Dresden Files, and he's just so good. Within the first paragraph, I could hear the despair in his voice, because it follows the death of a character from the prior book. And I was like, I can't do this right now. I can't believe I am DNFing a Dresden book a paragraph into it, at least for now, right? I mean, I'll go back to it a year or whatever. So I think that's a very long answer to your question, Taylor, but I think that rereading things going into that kind of trauma phase or space would be less interesting. What you talked about with Eliza Locke Lamora, did you mention Eliza Locke Lamora? Maybe you didn't.
It's Sword. It's right behind me, but not yet.
Oh, maybe that's what it is. That's a book I would absolutely reread, because I love the gamesmanship of that book, and I love the creativity of it. And for me, I think, having kind of gone through a whole load of experiences, particularly in the bar business, and dealing with what happens when your business has to be closed because of the government saying your business has to be closed, I think that the kind of ingenuity that Scott Lynch puts into those books is fantastic. And I think I would find more in something like that, where there's more creative solutions going on behind the scenes than there are huge trauma emotional events.
Completely understandable. I mean, not only are books subjective in the sense that everyone can get something different from them, but they also hit different at different points in your life. So I'm excited to see like the kind of more snappy gamified reads that you'll have this year.
Yeah, no doubt.
And I also wanted to put this up because we hadn't yet. Mrs. Wirtz is in the chat. I think
Jamie
Rising might be popping over soon.
She's the greatest. I mean, Janny's been such a huge emotional support for me with this business with my mom, because my mom, it was really funny. My mom was watching Tori's channel when Janny was on it, because my mom would find BookTube. My mom was, never a YouTube person until I started doing it. She couldn't miss an episode. Then when she'd see guests that would come on for whom the bell tolls, she'd start following their channels. So she would follow Tori, and she would follow Philip in particular. She's a huge Philip Chase fan. I just love Philip.
Who isn't a huge?
I'm so glad you're friends with Philip. He's just such a nice gentleman. I'm just so glad you guys are friends. But she was watching Tori, and Janny came on, and she was like having to pause the video because my mom was a bit older than Janny, and she was like, this younger woman than me is teaching me so much and giving me so much wisdom, and I just love her so much. So Janny's been fantastic. So hi, Janny. Have fun with Jake.
Phenomenal human.
Yeah.
Yes.
Jimmy Nuts. Yeah, she was middling on you. Middling. She could take you or leave you, to be honest with you, depending on the guest.
Yep. And I just wanted to say to everyone in the chat who's talking about two different chats going on, yes, our software allows us to have two different ones. So if you're not seeing chats on one of the streams that you're watching, you can go over to the other channel and you'll be able to see the ones that you feel that you're missing. So this is a double stream, just for people who had questions in the chat. Just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, you get us both at the same time. So, put Taylor's channel up, put mine beside it, and you can see both.
Yeah. Yeah. Jimmy, it was my name. And
Brian, I did want to, and I know Taylor's going to get to, some of your big, exciting news regarding your audiobook stuff, because that is wild. So I'll let Taylor get to that. But one thing I was always been curious about when it comes to what you like to read. You had mentioned that you are one of the few booktubers that really, like you said, you read a lot, you read widely, you cover a lot of subgenres, but you are indeed, as you said, one of the few booktubers that really has a lit RPG focus. Now, I'm not a big lit RPG person. I'm trying to think what I've read closest to it, and that's been very few books. But I'm just curious, what is your draw specifically to lit RPG? What is it that gets you going about that particular subgenre?
So I think one of my friends, Seth McDuffie, who's an author, and he's written several series. One of them is Meet Your Maker right now, describes lit RPG in a pretty good way of, it's like dopamine hits every other page. Something cool and eventful is happening, that some characters all of a sudden growing in power or learning new spells. And if you think about, like, when you read Harry Potter and he's in his classes and he learns Alohomora and he can open a lock, and we think that's the coolest thing. In lit RPG, that happens pretty regularly. And so there's this instant dopamine rush of, oh, cool, now this character who I love can do this, or they found this really cool item that allows them to do that. There's another piece of it in that I find it, I almost exclusively do my lit RPG consumption via audio, because it's something that I don't have to wonder what the heck we're talking about when we're in Malazan. I think that would be really hard to do, or even Wheel of Time or something like that. But lit RPG is fairly linear. It's normally focused on one or two main characters and their progression throughout the thing. So it's a little bit easier to follow on audio. There's a lot of dopamine hits that I enjoy. I've been a lifelong gamer in terms of video games. And so it gets incorrectly assumed that, oh, it's like reading a video game. It isn't, but there are elements that are familiar to those people who have played video games. But most importantly, and I can't stress this enough, there is a huge array of levels of lit RPG, from the creme de la creme to literally somebody who can hardly write and should never write, putting a book out. I don't think there's a bigger spread, because lit RPG up until Cradle came out, And now, of course, Dungeon Crawler Carl has always been indie published. And because the barrier to entry has been essentially zero, you'll get websites like the Royal Road that authors will just upload chapter by chapter by chapter and find a following that way. And so you get everything from really great stuff to just the worst schlock in the world. And one of the things that I like to do, to bring the question back to what you asked me about covering it on the channel, is to try to sort out what I think people that read fantasy and science fiction would actually like. Because there is sci-fi lit RPG as well. It's not just fantasy. But primarily, a good lit RPG has to be story and character first for me. It's not mechanics. It's not this progression system. It's not loot that they find. That has to be secondary for me to want to read it and talk about it and recommend it on the channel, because we're all here for stories. And the crossover between fantasy readers and lit RPG readers is something only like 10 to 15%. They are widely different groups of demographics of people that read those books. So in many sense, because most of the viewers here on BellTube are fantasy readers, I'm trying to bring them into the lit RPG stuff in stories that I think that they would enjoy. Meanwhile, PL is getting a ticket, I think. I don't know.
No.
But so I cover that, and I also really want to give people the right recommendations for it, so they don't one and done them going, well, I tried this and it was horrible, so I hated the genre. Because we wouldn't do that in any other genre. We wouldn't read fantasy and go, well, I hated that fantasy book, so I'm never going to read another fantasy again. But you'll find that happens all the time in lit RPG. They'll pick one book, they go, oh, it wasn't for me, the genre is over, which I think is a little silly, but it's okay. I'm here. I'll be here to bring people back to the fold, so to speak.
The guardian of the genre. I love it.
You know, I mean, and that's honestly why there's companies out there that publish these lit RPG audiobooks that sponsor my streams sometimes, because there's very few booktubers that will try to be professional and come across as credible, that actually read the material and can speak to it and recommend it, good or bad. So yeah. But I think we're going to start to see more of that. I mean, the fact that you can't go into any Target and not see Dungeon Crawler Carl all over the place, everybody's going to be looking for the next Dungeon Crawler Carl now. I mean, money talks in the publishing world, so in the traditional publishing world. So you'll see more of it for sure.
What this is kind of reminding me of, this idea of curation, reminds me of how things, there's also different genres that have come from the fan fiction world and are now being indie published, right? And so there are other genres where people are trying to curate recommendations for people who are trying to get into the genre. But this does lead me into a discussion about your audiobook announcement, because this idea of curation is a huge factor in what you're releasing, right?
Yeah.
So not only are you the guardian of the lit RPG genre, but you're also hoping to curate a collection of audiobooks for listeners. So if you wouldn't mind just telling those who are listening, if they live under a rock and haven't heard about it yet,
Sure.
what is your big audiobook announcement?
Yeah. So back in September, I was marinating an idea of starting an audiobook publishing company, because the business side of me is looking for opportunities in things that I have interest in. And I have been an Amazon seller. I've got this product called BellFlask. It's a flexible flask, and I've been selling it on Amazon for like 9 or 10 years. And selling physical products on Amazon has become worse and worse and worse for the sellers as the last few years have gone on. Not so much for digital product sellers. It's much easier, but I am very accustomed to looking at Amazon screens and understanding the opacity and the very opaque and murky level of financials and reportings and all of those things, that I feel like, okay, I understand the platform where over 90% of books are sold, and that's Audible. Of course, they're owned by Amazon. So I get that from the business side. Then I started to think about, audiobook publication. And it occurred to me that there are, obviously, same as written word books, there are traditional publishers and there are more independent publishers or smaller companies, right? So you've got your Random House over here, and then you've got your Podium Entertainment over here, which is still a big company, but they're not Random House. But what I noticed is that there are some companies out there that do a phenomenal job producing audiobooks. They find the best talent in the world. They find pretty good books most of the time, but they're a volume-based enterprise where they want to throw out as many audiobooks as they can because they're not sure what is going to be a hit. So let's throw out 100 books, for example, and if 3 of them are a hit, we'll recoup our costs back on the other 97 that didn't. And I look at that as almost like an HBO or Amazon Prime Video, where they've got lots of shows and they've got a couple of hits, but they've got a lot of shows and those hits make up for them. What I wanted to do was curate some independent books that I felt like I could ask the first question of myself, is this book great? Because if the answer is the book is okay or the book is good, but it's not great, it's out. Okay. So it's got to be great. Then the next question is, do I believe that and again, I've listened to hundreds, if not thousands of audiobooks at this point. Do I believe I either personally know or can get in touch with a voice actor that would be perfect for this role? That would just absolutely be the right pairing. Think of it almost as like a wine sommelier, if you will, okay, where they know this is the wine that you're going to want with this meal. This is what we know. And I feel like I've got that as well. And the biggest part of it is that I've noticed that as many great books as a lot of these publishers have put together, be it traditional or independent, where they fall apart is in the sales and the marketing. And they rely on the author to do it for them, which I think is not fair. I think authors should be doing what they do, and that's writing books. Sometimes authors happen to be great sales and marketing people. Look no further than John Minton and Amy and Jacob over Talking Story. They are very equipped to be out and about talking up their book all over the place, right? Then you'll have other authors who are more introverted by nature. And once they get into it and they realize, hey, be it traditional or even with an independent audiobook company, the onus is really on them to go out and do the marketing, to hit all the social medias, to join all the Reddit groups, to be in all the Facebook groups, to be on all the Instagram, right places, to know how to do social media advertising properly and not just scattershot it all out there. And I started to think, okay, well, I've got all this experience with my Amazon stuff. I'm looking at those screens all day. I know how to do e-commerce advertising. I have a natural ability to be passionate about books that I really think are great, so I can be credible and not just trying to sell any old book. And I want to try to curate this both in terms of the work itself, paired perfectly with the narrator, and put it into a package where we don't do 100 books a year. Maybe we do 5 books a year. But I think of it more like an Apple TV type of an idea where they don't have a new show coming out every single week to tell you what's new. But the shows they do put on are extremely high quality. They're exceptionally well made, and they tend to be critically reviewed pretty well. And that was sort of the onus for where I thought about doing this company. And I decided to call it BellWorks Audio because my product is called BellFlask for my flask product that's patented, and the channel is called BellTube. So for kind of consistency and branding, I thought BellWorks is cool because it seems a little bit curated. It seems kind of handcrafted. It seems boutique-y enough, which is what I'm going for. And audio, stands for itself. So BellWorks, one word, audio, the second word. And the Kickstarter, I suspect, is going to go live on March 1st or March 2nd. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how it gets back. It's going to be a great litmus test for me. It's going to be, hey, people think that I can actually pull this off, or they don't. And either way, it's great information to know if it's just a cool idea that I have, or if it's a cool idea that is contagious and that people go, you know what, that is a cool idea. I will throw $5 at this because I want to see this company, start and see what Brian puts together. So that's kind of my 5-minute elevator. That's a long elevator speech, isn't it? We could have gotten to the top of what's the tallest tower in Japan? I don't know.
The Sky Tree. Sky Tree.
We
Yeah.
could have gone up and down the Sky Tree several times in my not so brief explanation. But that's I hope I did an adequate job explaining kind of why I'm doing what I'm doing and why I'm doing what I'm doing. Because I feel like there's just so much great stuff out there, and I feel for these authors that have quality audiobooks out there, and they're lost in the sea of obscurity because there's just so much out there, and they're not natural sales and marketing people.
Well, we wanted to know the bottom of the iceberg, so I'm glad that you took your time to share all of that, and I think you did a great job explaining why. And I also was curious, you emphasized the boutiqueness, the curated aspect of it, and I'm seeing that trend in other places in the book world as well. So small local bookshops, support local, support indie. I'm just seeing a lot of trends away from large productions, like Amazon or some of the, or Audible, things like that. Not that those aren't useful for getting the word out, but I am seeing a trend going towards more boutique or local choices. So I'm just wondering, with your business acumen, was that part of your process when you were deciding what to go for, or was it more just based on this is what I would like to do, or was it just lucky?
I think both. I think that I wanted to curate a catalog where everything was great, where people might have never heard of the author. They might not have ever heard of the narrator, the voice actor, but they know that BellWorks puts out good stuff, where it's going to sound, just from a listener's point of view, professionally done. The post-production house I've got in Los Angeles ready to go for this is top caliber. This is S-tier level production. And that they would feel like, even if they don't know what this thing's about, if BellWorks is doing it, it's probably worth taking a listen to. So that was a piece of it. I think in terms of small versus large, the catalog itself will be small. However, my intention is to be exclusively sold on Audible. And I promise you, you will never interview anybody on this show or meet anybody in IRL that hates Amazon more than I do. I've been a professional seller there for a decade. Nobody has gotten under my skin more than them. So it's not like I'm in this great rush to bring them business. But the bottom line is that I can provide higher royalties to the author based on exclusivity agreements with Audible than if I were, it's literally double than if I were to go put it out in smaller audiobook spaces. In a perfect world, I would love that. I would love it for people who, they say there's something like 10 or 15% of United States e-commerce buyers that refuse to buy anything off Amazon. They just hate them so much, they won't. But the truth is, the vast majority of people do their audiobook shopping on Audible. And I know I can pay royalties better to the author if we're getting double the royalties, where most of the shoppers honestly really are, regardless of my personal distaste for the parent company to begin with. So I know that going in, but that's kind of the answer. Is the curation and the smallness is extraordinarily intentional. I don't want to just throw a million things up against the wall, but the distribution of it, I want it to be I want to be where most of the people are buying, and that's with Audible. And it, like I said, it affords me the opportunity to pay out a better royalty to the creator.
Oh, for sure. It's not black and white. That's why I was genuinely curious. where your decision process came from.
Yeah. The other part of it is honestly, I'm going to be using high-priced narrators. I mean, there's no other way around it. There's a scale when it comes to voice actors, what they get paid per finished hour of a book. And the ones that I'm using are on the very high end of that. And so it's important that the sales that are generated, we get the most recoup back. And that's, really from an exclusivity with Audible. It pays for the books a little bit better.
Oh, for sure. And I just love that you saw something that you would like to see. You recognize something that you would like to see in the world, and you made it happen. I think that that's how our community grows, how it changes. It just brings me a lot of joy to see people like yourself actually taking action on that. But I did want to make sure that I passed it over to PL, because I know he had thoughts on your announcement and the audiobooks as well, and I don't want to take over this portion.
No, I hope and always feel free to interrupt me, because if you've not figured out, I will talk until interrupted. So feel free to hand signal or whatever if you want to move on to the next question.
You're totally fine. Totally fine.
No, you're totally fine, Taylor. And Brian, first of all, I just want to say huge congratulations on this endeavor. I know it's going to be successful because it's you that's doing it. I think you're going to see. You are one of those people, as I always say, along with the Philip Chases, and the Janny Words, and the Mintons, and the Taylors. You can name your people that are beloved, right?
Oh, thanks.
In the community. So, I do not doubt that there will be a groundswell of support for your Kickstarter. I'm wishing you the best of luck. I don't think you need it, frankly, but I know it's going to be fantastic, and I cannot wait to see what you do and where you take this.
Thank you.
It's really exciting.
It is, and right now it's weird. I was just telling Tori yesterday that I essentially have two TBRs right now. I have my normal TBR, which I read kind of in the afternoons and sometimes in the early evenings. And I have my curation TBR, which I've started to do more like 9 in the morning of material that I'm possibly interested in producing audio for. And I almost have to separate it. Like, one is like mining in a gold mine shaft, right? Trying to dig through and see if we can find some gold nuggets in all of this stuff. And the other is purely what I want to read for my own stuff. And they're really, really different sometimes, but it's interesting.
Can I ask you, though, and I'm not asking you to give away any trade secrets, I'm not asking you to broadcast, but can you give us some idea of what kind of books would you be looking to produce that you think would be a fit for I know there's a bunch of authors out there right now. They're like, oh my gosh, Brian Bell is starting up an audiobook company. I want to be, I want to compete to be part of that because it's Brian Bell.
Oh,
so, so for people have come to me and said, do you know anything about it? I said, well, just message him. Don't be shy. But I mean, since we have you on the show, the Taylor and I have you on the show, I'm curious to know if you can tell us, hey, what are you looking for?
Sure. I can answer that pretty simply. So, and it's one of the reasons why I didn't even announce anything until last month is because I've been doing all this background stuff for all of the fourth quarter of last year. The way that Audible prices audiobooks, it's entirely out of the hands of the author or the publisher, unless you are a huge publisher and you have kind of like a sweetheart deal with Amazon, then you can maybe set your prices. But for the most part, when you're getting started, they set the price, and they set those prices many times based on the length of the book. And there's kind of this bracket that anything under 10 hours is at one price, and anything over 10 hours kind of demands a higher price. And we would like to get a higher price because that, again, we pay for the book a little bit better and more royalties for the author. So what does that mean? Generally speaking, you're looking at about 100,000-ish words to get to around about that 10-hour audiobook. So I will go below that if the material is really good, but 100,000 words is sort of the starting point. Now, there is kind of an ending point too, because once you get past 200,000 words, those audio production hours really start to add up if you're hiring A-level talent, because wow, our book cost just doubled to make, right? But we can't all of a sudden charge way more money just because we're using a higher paid voice actor. So that sweet spot for the books that I'm most interested as we get started, and obviously there's going to be exceptions on both the low end and on the high end, but as we kind of curate the first year's worth of stuff, between 100 and 200,000 words is pretty good. Regarding material, if it's a standalone book, cool. If it's the first of a series of books, I would be looking for somebody to already be well into completion of the second book or have a pretty good timeline on when that's going to happen. Because what I've noticed in both my own buying habits and just seeing how audio sales have gone for friends of mine that have sequences of books all in the same series, many times if there's only one book out in a projected series, that buyer may wait till there's at least two books and go, okay, I want to at least get the first couple of books and we'll go from there. So that's important as well. And in fantasy, it's interesting because we either get a trilogy or we get like this never-ending Dresden Files, or we get Malazan, which is 8 billion words, okay, and 180 hours of audio per book. And so there's just a lot of things that all sort of have to squeeze into that Venn diagram. You know, is it the right size? Is it the, you know, is it a standalone, or are there a sequence of books coming out that are relatively close that a reader's not going to have to wait a year or two or more to get that next audiobook? And then it's also got to be compelling to me. And that is unfortunately not something that an author is going to know till I take a look at it, because the whole foundation of this is that I got to be fired up for this thing. I'm going to bust my butt to do my best for this author. I want to be legit fired up for this book. And that's not something anybody can write to. And they shouldn't write for, oh, what I think Brian might like. That would be silly. They should write the book they want to write. If I happen to like it and all those Venn diagrams meet in the middle, perfect. Does that answer the question at all? I hope.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So all those out there who've been asking me, hey, you know, Brian has told you, you've heard from the horse's mouth, you know, what the business model is going forward, a bit about it anyway. So
yeah,
hopefully,
I was going to say there's at BellWorksAudio.com, there's a placeholder website right now. We are currently doing two things regarding like electronic stuff. We are building the website as we speak, and we are building out the Kickstarter. I just finished all the tiers, what all the different tier levels are going to be yesterday. So all of that will go live soon, but at BellWorksAudio.com, even now, there's a placeholder website, says our name, says coming in 2026, and there's a contact form, and people can put their email in if they just want to be on an email list to find out what the company's up to. And there's also, you know, a place for someone to say, hey, I've got this book. I'd like you to take a look at it. How do I email you an e-copy? And I can write back and just say, hey, send it this way and tell me a little bit about it. And if it seems like something that I'd be fired up to read, cool. Just read one of them last week. And we're kind of talking, you know, maybe this will be the first one. We'll see. It satisfied the, is this a really great book that I could get behind? Yeah, absolutely it did. So now it's just all technicalities from here on forth with that one.
The not fun stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
I just love how you've opened this up as a community building thing as well, right? It's pulling from the community of people that you've established connections with all these years. So as someone who, you know, I say community a lot on my channel because it's such an important thing, I feel. But I think this is such a good solution to bringing all of your talents together and then saying, hey, all these people that have been in this community with me for these years, here's an opportunity for us to connect on another level. I think it's a great business model.
Thank you so much. I mean, it blows me away that BellTube has 2,000 less subscribers than Simon & Schuster's YouTube channel. I mean, come on. They're not even trying. And I look at so many of the audiobook, professional companies that produce a great product, but why don't they have YouTube channels? Why don't they have their authors on all the time? Why don't they communicate with book reviewers that talk about these things? It's
Mm.
like they just throw them into the ether and pray to God that something works. I don't want to do that. So
Mhm.
yeah, I don't know. I'm excited. Well, we're going to see. I've always been a risk taker, and I've always jumped into things that I know absolutely nothing about. When I got into the nightclub business, I had literally never worked in a bar before. So I wasn't a bartender. I hadn't done anything. I just said, I'm doing this. And I thought maybe I'd do it for 3 or 4 years, right?
Yeah.
I was between jobs. The company that I had worked for was sold. They said, you can stay if you want to move to Cincinnati. I'm like, no, I'm happy here. Thank you very much. And I was like, so what am I going to do? So I went and did that. And kind of the same with this, although I'm a little bit better prepared for this because, like I said, the technical side of the Audible, Amazon, understanding how they work is something that I know extraordinarily well through good
Mm.
times and bad times with them. And I know how to solve problems with Audible/Amazon. And I actually, there was a author on X not that long ago that I happened to, he follows me and he was talking about how his audiobook got deleted by Amazon for some reason. He can't get it back up and his account's gone and they thought somebody else wrote it. And I just DM'd him and I said, here's exactly what you need to do. This is
Mm.
the email address. This is what you need to tell them, this, and this. And 3 days later, his audiobook was back up online again. And this is with no experience in audiobooks at all, but Amazon experience up the wazoo. And he was like, oh my God. He goes, I can't believe that worked. I was like, well, 10 years of fighting the beast that is Amazon will teach you a couple things.
Well, that's something that I've always admired about you and your channel and the way that you approach reading as well, is the willingness to learn, to try, to expand. And one thing that you did for several years was that DNF challenge, right? Where you asked people specifically for a book that they thought could defeat you and make you DNF something, right? It's a very unique way to take on hate reading, and I'm kind of here for it.
Yeah. I want to do it again. I absolutely want to do it again.
Yeah.
I'm going to do it again this year. I just don't know what month. Now that Mladen's done, I have time to do it. The reason I didn't do it last year, and for anybody who doesn't know what this is, I had asked 7 booktubers, give me a book that you dislike so much that you DNF'd it. Now, there are some booktubers like Andrew from Andrew's Wizardly Reads that DNFs as often as everybody else has lunch. Okay. So for him, it was like, here's a myriad of choices. There's other people like Philip or Mike that rarely, if ever, DNF anything. And so I knew coming from some of those people, this thing's going to be terrible. I mean, this is just going to be, if they couldn't even get through it, Philip's the most forgiving person in the world. If he can't even get through it, what am I going to think of it? And so, yeah, talk about expanding horizons and seeing if I could, and part of it was an internal game I was playing with myself, Taylor, was, can I figure out why this particular booktuber DNF'd this particular book? And I was actually pretty accurate most of the way through. And I want to do it again. So maybe you guys will submit some books that you think
Sure.
we're pretty awful. And I'll read them. And the actual winner of that was Josh from Red Fury Books, gave me what I considered to be the worst book of the bunch in the last DNF challenge. So I should do that again.
I love that. Well, not only I think is it an exercise in learning how to parse a story, right? But also I feel like it's an exercise in finding your own taste. Like, oh, if this was a deal breaker for this person, but it's not for me, then I know that going forward, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that there's a lot of benefits to it. But I am curious, after your experience, like doing the whole DNF challenge, and then you mentioned earlier that in fantasy, we always get like these chonker of a book,
Yeah.
like, or never ending series or trilogies. It's just a lot of commitment. And then people in that fan space will always say, well, the next one, right? So we kind of have this atmosphere of keep trying, right? So I'm wondering what your thoughts are on DNFing versus the sunk cost fallacy kind of feeling we get when we're 5 or 6 books into a series. What are your thoughts on those two things? Do you think they can coexist, or what are your
Yeah,
thoughts?
so I'm kind of a unique cat when it comes to DNFing. I never DNF anything. Like I said, the closest thing in ever is this 12 months business that I started this week. And that was just not because I didn't like the book. It's just the subject matter was too heavy. And that will 100% be listened to when I'm ready for it. But
Right.
I just generally don't DNF books. I don't know if it's a sunk cost fallacy. I think there's just something intrinsic about me that when I read it, I am optimistic and mostly wrong that it's going to get better at some point in the book. And usually I can suss out pretty quickly if I'm going to like this book or not, but I will persevere through it as much as possible. Now, I will say I'm very grateful to BookTube because it has made that risk factor of picking books mitigated completely. Because if I'm watching 5 booktubers whose taste I align with 90% of the time and they all like a book, I'm not going to run into books as often that I'm going to personally DNF and be completely in disagreement with everybody else. Um, so I always finish a book that I start, but I don't always finish a series that I start if I'm kind of getting bored with it, or I feel like it's just not moving in a direction that I'm enjoying that in the way that I thought it would. I'll give you an example. And this isn't one that I've DNF'd for good, but I never got back to the Bloodsworn saga by John Gwynne. And I loved The Faithful and the Fallen, completely loved it, completely enjoyed the first book of Bloodsworn saga, but I just haven't felt called to pick up books 2 and books 3 yet. And that's odd. So that one I probably will get to. I'm almost certain that I will get to. And honestly, you guys, reading Malazan and Wars of Light and Shadow at the same time for the last 12 months has
Madman. Madman.
completely wrecked, okay, my
Yeah.
normal ways
Yeah.
of reading. But, and I suspect I'll get back to that, but I don't know, Taylor. I think I'm way too big of an optimist when it comes to reading that I think it's going to get better. I mean, when I talk about, you know, a lit RPG series, like one that's called He Who Fights with Monsters, and it's got 12 books out, and a third of them are horrible. Okay. But they're always seeming to be like every third book. So I'm like sucked in like an addict, like, you know, the guy at the slot machine that gets that payoff every now, just often enough that this is going to be the time that it's going to be a really great one. And it provides for some suffering, to be honest, because they're not all great. But I don't know. I think once I get into something, I kind of stick to it. But I do not fault people for DNFing at all. Where I kind of do fault people for DNFing is when they DNF something pretty early in a book and then they go write a review, because I think it's kind of an incomplete. I mean, I think you could say I DNF'd it, but I wouldn't 1-star it and say this book was awful because I read 3 chapters and it sucked. And, you know, I don't think that helps a reader. You know, it certainly hurts the author. I don't think it helps a review reader at all, because you're not giving them enough information to make a reasonable decision based on. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. You're preaching to the converted here, Brian. I'm the same exact way about DNFs. I don't DNF, and I don't give 1 stars. Period. I just don't do it, because I feel like, for me, I'm not saying 1 star can be valuable. I'm saying they don't. For me, I don't feel I'm providing value.
Yeah.
When I do that, I'd sooner just not say anything about the book if I felt that because what am I offering? Do you know what I mean? But yeah, and I'm not saying that a negative review can't be one person's negative review is another person's positive one, but yeah, I totally agree. I don't DNF. I'm a serial completionist, if that's a phrase.
I think that's a thing. I think that's absolutely a thing. And I think it makes it harder on us many times as fantasy readers because everything is a series. I mean,
Yeah.
I've read a couple of Guy Gavriel K books, and I might hopefully read A Song for Our Bone with Philip next month. And it's like those are great because okay, cool, I'm committing to a book. And series can be tricky, especially in fantasy, and especially if they deal with complex themes and have a lot of characters, because I generally don't like to space them out too long because my memory is a sieve and I will forget it in 4 months and it's a lost cause and I don't want to do that. But I don't know. I think when I read Wheel of Time, so in 2021, I flipped a coin because it was the pandemic, the bar was closed. I didn't know what I was going to do. I had all this time on my hands. I'm going to read. Heads, it's Wheel of Time. Tails, it's Malazan. That's how I ended up reading the Wheel of Time in 2021. Came up heads, flipped it once, landed on the ground. Okay. Read that straight through all 14 books, 3.5, 4 months. That was it. And I remember finishing that going, okay, I'm not reading Malazan for another 3 years because I was so burned out with not stopping once I started that, yeah. Anyway, that has nothing to do with the DNF, but this is
No,
what
it
you
does.
get when you get me on the channel. Assume 3 times in the conversation I'm going to take it off the rails at some point. Just plan
That's
for
not
it.
that's the opposite of a DNF, and that's why I wanted to bring it up also because I know that PL is also like DNF is not in his vocabulary. I don't have time for all that.
Yeah.
So if you're not impressing me, it's gone. But that is new for me, actually. Before I was making content, I was also a serial completionist.
Yeah.
But in the last maybe like 3-ish years, especially since I started my like Patreon and like reading for them, like I'm just like, nah. If I like it, you get my time. If not, you don't. So it's interesting hearing your guys' perspective.
How long does it normally take? So when you DNF a book, Taylor, and again, I'll save my questions for you when you guys come on my show because
Sure.
I've got questions for both of you. Trust me.
Ooh.
And I hope you will accept my invite to come on the show. Probably have you guys on.
Absolutely.
Probably have you
Consider
guys on
it accepted.
separately because
Absolutely.
I think I could talk to both of you each for an hour and a half easily. But how far into a book does it take you to know when you're DNFing? Have you DNF'd at like chapter 1, or where's your limit where you go, okay, I've read X chapters.
Right.
It ain't happening.
So I have 2 different standards. One, if I'm reviewing a book professionally, like for Before We Go blog or anything like that, and one when it's like just a personal read that I'm doing because I feel like it. So if it's professional, or I've been involved in lots of indie competitions, right? For that, I give it either 100 pages or 40% of the book. Those are like my numbers. And then outside of that, if it's a personal read, I can DNF at any point. I don't have any rule for myself. But I also do stand with you on I don't rate my DNFs. I just say it was a DNF. For pretty much the same reasons that you've mentioned, that I feel I haven't read the whole story. So I just leave it at that. But yeah, it depends on what the purpose of the review is or why I'm reading it.
Makes sense to me. I mean, the other thing too is like when we talk about reviews, I am significantly tougher on traditionally published books than I am on independently published books, because I think there's such a certain sense of bravery that an independent author has to undertake to say, you know what, especially if they shopped it to a trad and the trad didn't believe in them and they say, you know what, I'm not going to listen to them. I'm going to believe in myself. And I'm going to put this thing out there to the world, regardless of what a trad pub thought or whoever was reading and curating on that day. And I don't ever want to put somebody who's put themselves out there and taken that plunge and been brave enough to do it, even when a publisher said no, a trad said no, they did it anyway. I do not want to, yuck all over them. No, thank you. I'll just say, hey, it was all right. It wasn't really my thing. And I'll move on. Traditionally published books, though, where there are paid editors and paid reviewers and paid people that are supposed to be curating good stuff, I'm tougher on, because there should be a bit of a standard with some of them, and some of them are just a cash grab. And I'm not afraid to call that out. that that a traditional publisher is doing this for the cash, not for the story, not for anything else, but they think they can sell a bunch of books. And people shouldn't buy books because the publisher thinks they should. They should buy books because they're good books. So, yeah.
Well, I don't think you're going to find anyone to disagree with that. But I have seen that conversation as a big part of the community recently, that editing and the work being done on traditionally published books is not what it used to be. I have seen that in many different circles. So I think that that's a much broader discussion that would take a lot of time to get into.
Absolutely, yeah.
But I do see that trend that you're talking about. But I don't know if PL had any final questions, because we're coming up on an hour and a half. Thank you so much for being so generous with your time. But I had like a silly one to throw out for you guys.
I love, come on, you guys, if you've seen the show, literally there's.
Well, it's still book related.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
But essentially this past year, I've really branched out. Fantasy is always going to be my home base. It's going to be where I live. But I really got into short fiction. I read a lot of poetry, a lot of translated works. And something that I've always enjoyed in visual format, but I've never tried in written format, is like, the police shows where everything's going to be all right in the end, so you can put it on the background. And I know both of you like police procedurals. Like that's something that you both read. So I was hoping, starting with Brian, can you pitch that to me? Pitch me that genre, and so I can see if I should pick it up.
Sure. Well, I'm relatively new to it. So most of my police procedural stuff is TV, but I did just read The Last Coyote by Michael Connelly, and it is essentially, the premise of the story is we have a cop in Los Angeles that has been put on administrative leave for punching his superior officer, and he is in mandated therapy while he's on leave to go through what appears to be his anger issues. And what he decides to do with his time while he's on leave is to solve a very old cold case that just gets, these cold cases get thrown into the locker room in some dungeon somewhere in some archive, and they just get forgotten about forever. So he decides he's going to take his time that he's got. He doesn't want to be on leave, but he's on leave. Let's figure out this cold case. And this is an interesting cold case because it's a murder. And what makes it even more interesting is the victim was his mother. So we have all this emotional drama going on with a very well-seasoned cop who is clearly not a by the books kind of guy because he's currently on leave for hitting his superior officer, but it's a page turner. And I think when you talk about crime fiction and procedurals and things like that, there are some elements in that genre that we get far not enough of in fantasy, especially epic fantasy. Short chapters. When's the last time, Taylor, you read a chapter that was 5 pages? Do you know what I mean? It's like, it doesn't happen. We get reasons that we want to turn the page as quickly as possible to find out what just happened. So I think for me, that's absolutely a huge piece of why I like these kind of procedurals, is because there's something always happening and there's always new information. If that makes sense.
It does. It does. And it sounds like it would be a good, what I call an in-between book. So you've got your big fantasy series and then you pick up something in between.
Yeah. Terrific palate cleanser types of stuff. And as I mentioned on my channel, and this was a book that we did with our book club, the Illuminati, and I was like, let's do a book that is so outside of our genre. Yeah, see, Phil, I called it The Last Cowboy, and when I was talking about it, and Dr. Chase will never forget it. Exactly. But it just puts your brain somewhere else, right? I mean, it's like if you were reading a chemistry book, okay, in chemistry class, and then you go read, Of Mice and Men, okay, in your English class, your brain functions differently. And in some regard, when we go from epic fantasy that has made up names and made up worlds and made up everything, and we get into something like a crime fiction or a procedural, that is part of our life. We know what it's like to see a cop driving down the street. We know what it's like to turn on the news and something terrible has happened and something needs to be solved. It's just a different brain experience altogether. So like you said, those kind of in-between books, it resets the mind, at least for me, to go back to those crazy mystical worlds again, or those sci-fi worlds again, because my brain has eaten something different. It's like you don't want Italian food every night, right? You switch to something else. You still love Italian food, but maybe you're in the mood for sushi tonight, right? See, I threw a Japanese reference in there just for you. Yeah.
Nailed it.
Yes, thank you.
Well, I'd say that was a pretty solid pitch. I don't know if PL has anything to add to that, but I feel pretty convinced to give it a shot.
That's an amazing pitch and it's funny. I've read almost everything, and I never talk about these books. I've read so many police procedurals. I've read great ones. I've read really well-known ones. I've read ones that and I don't talk about them all on BookTube. I don't write reviews. I don't, because it's just, for the most part, I don't read them anymore. But I was, this time I was really into them because of my career, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's why I kind of got away from them, because when my career became when art started to imitate life,
Yeah.
I think I started to back away from them a bit. But my pitch quickly is and now of course, and I haven't watched the show. It's a TV show. It is the Reacher books. The Jack Reacher books.
Yeah, I love it.
And I'm not up to date. I think I've read 6, 7 of those. I don't know how many in the series. I haven't read one in years. But what I love about that series is that, the whole concept of this anomaly, a former military police, high-ranking military police officer who is essentially transient, is homeless, lives off-grid, doesn't have a bank account, doesn't, sleeps in hotels, hitches rides, barely has anything, any worldly possessions to his name, but travels around to all these different towns and always winds up in the middle of some crime that he's got to solve, right? And I think what I love the most about that series is that it just shows you that, because I always say with people who are in emergency services in particular, in law enforcement, in policing, fire, ambulance, etc., military, we all are humans and we have our issues, we have our problems, we have our life complexities, and it's just refreshing to see that this person has their issues, but has kind of made a choice to live off grid almost, right? And an interesting choice, especially considering his background, right?
Yeah.
He was part of not just a law enforcement agency, but the military. So a military organization with the rank structure, etc., where you are conforming in so many ways in the organization you're part of, but yet you decide when you leave I'm just gonna be transient. It's just I think the concept is just really, and yes, it's very formulaic. We know what's gonna happen at the end.
Mm-hmm.
He's gonna maybe get beat up once, and he's gonna beat a whole bunch of people up, and he's gonna solve the crime. But I think that series is awesome.
Yeah,
What
sometimes
go
it's
ahead.
just fun to have an adventure where we've got this overpowered character in Jack Reacher that always finds himself in the wrong place at the wrong time, but thank God he's there, or the world would be going to heck in a handbasket without him there, and he finds himself in this position. Yeah, it's just fun. And the best authors that do this, and I really think the channel that I recommend the most for this kind of stuff is, there's Red Fury Books. Josh reads all of it, and Criminale, I think, in Britain does a lot of this stuff as well. But yeah, that it's not, the main character is not going to, there's no fear that they're going to die at the end of the book. Okay.
Yeah.
So the stakes are different. The world is probably not going to be eaten by Sauron, the Dark Lord. The stakes are much, narrower in most cases, but our brains aren't used to that coming from sci-fi and fantasy. So I think, Taylor, you'd find some value there, just in a change, just a refresh, I think.
Yeah. Well, I think both of you really hit the nail on the head there, in that it's predictability is not necessarily a bad thing. We see this in romance. I use that for in between books all the time, right? Particularly the genre of romance, not romance in books in general. But
Sure.
I do think that there's a beauty to that kind of consistent storyline, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I was wondering if I could be sold on it. And I think crime fiction could be interesting. I think
Yeah, I'll tell you one thing too, is they all read very quickly. I mean, I read The Last Coyote in 2 sittings. So that's another bonus. You're not committing, and then most of them can be read as standalones as well. So, I mean, there's a beginning, there's a middle, and an end, and they don't really cliffhang you much, if at all. So you fit them in when you want to.
Yeah. That's the point. You can pick up Jack Reacher book 8, and you don't need to know. It's nice to know that some of his military police companions, that this person is this person, but really you don't need to know, right? You can pick it up in the middle of the series, quote unquote series, and not be lost. Whereas you can't do that typically in any epic fantasy series.
Yeah, and the thing is like the book that I was just sharing, The Last Coyote, it's actually the 4th book in the Harry Bosch series. And that's what I asked Josh. I said, you sure you want to start me off with book 4? And he said, yeah, you don't need to know the first 3 books. It's better, writing. It's a more compelling story. It's a better way to get kind of invested in the character himself. Start at book 4. So, yeah. Now, don't start Malazan at book 4.
No, don't do that. Do not. No. Don't.
I'm not that crazy.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Don't do that.
No, thanks for answering my silly question.
That's not a silly
I didn't
question.
know if BL had anything that I talked
No,
over.
but my main thing was, just as we wrap up, just to thank Brian so much more for what he does for the community. I think it goes, he's someone who, I mean, we know he gets his flowers, but he deserves them all, for being such a wonderful, integral, important part of the community, who I feel that, I'm missing something if I miss one of his videos. I feel like I'm missing something if I don't catch up and see how he's doing, what he's doing. I'm missing something when I don't hear his words of wisdom and his words of motivation and inspiration. So, thank you for what you've added to my life personally, Brian,
and
what you add to all of our lives in the community. We really appreciate it.
You guys are awesome. It is very cool. And if I've been a support for you in any way, or anybody who's watching this, trust me, the viewers support me just as much. Some of the comments that I get are just incredible, and just watching your all's channels is equally supportive. So the river runs both ways on that one, my friend, because truly there are channels that I don't miss episodes, and you've hit the nail on the head there.
Yeah, I second everything PL said. Thanks for being such an integral part of the community, building it and continuing it. So it's these connections that keep it going. Right?
I think so too. And it's the beauty of, for all the lousy things about the internet and social media and all the things, this is a great space. I've never, in all the years that I've done different things, I've never found more like-minded, open-minded people than I have in this BookTube community. It's just truly a special place to be. It's a nice refresher from a lot of the toxicity that is not only just in the world, but in other parts of just social media or the YouTube or whatever, but the book space itself, particularly this kind of genres that we get into. I think because we've read so much fantasy and sci-fi and all that, we've walked in other people's shoes plenty to be just sort of aware that not everybody has our own experiences. And I find that anytime I'm even thinking about being judgmental, I have to stop and think. And I watch one of your all BookTube's channel and I go, you know what? They've got really good outlooks on things I hadn't thought of before. So as much as you say I support the community, trust me, it goes both ways. And I find a lot of energy and drive and inspiration from watching channels like yours and some of the people that have been in the chat today too, including that dude whose comment is up on the screen there.
Yeah, Philip's one of the best of us. So yeah, we love Philip, and like you, the world is a better place having someone like Philip in it. So
I think he's been here for thousands of years. I maintain the fact he's a Highlander. I think there can be only one. I think Philip never studied medieval English. I think he was there for it. Yeah,
he could be a dragon or something. He could be. Yeah, there's a few. I have a few theories about Philip, but maybe one day he'll reveal.
Philip McLeod of the Clan McLeod. I'm telling you.
It's almost like, just to finish out your previous point, it's almost like reading breeds empathy or something like that, So
you think? I do believe it. I do believe that to be truth.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, I did mention it earlier, but thank you so much for your time, being generous with it. It's so easy for these to go so long when we have interesting people on here like you. But before we leave, I wanted to give you a chance to do any kind of sign off that you'd like to do, anything that you would like people to leave the stream knowing. And just so everyone knows, the link to BellTube will be in the description down below. If by some reason you've never seen it down there. But just give you a chance to sign off.
Awesome. I want to thank both of you guys for having me on. This is so long overdue. I'm really excited I can put this on my BookTube resume that I got to be on Page Chewing, which is awesome. You guys are fantastic. For those people that are watching, it's an honor to put shows together for you guys. I really enjoy it. It when I'm having tough weeks and I get to make a video, it puts a smile on my face, and it wouldn't happen without people that are on the other end of the screen watching that. So I want to thank you guys for doing that. If you have interest in, like she said in the description, you can check out my channel. And if you want to know more about BellWorks Audio, there is a page holder at bellworksaudio.com, and you can throw your email in there, and I'll put you on our email list and give you all the updates on when the Kickstarter is going to go live, some of the guest celeb voice actors that I've already got lined up for our company, which are just killer. And yeah, we'll just leave it at that, I think, for now. But this has been just super fun, and you guys make an hour and a half go by like that. So really, really cool.
The feeling is mutual. I looked at the clock. I was like, oh, we gotta let this man go. But I don't know if PL, if you wanted to sign off as well before go?
Yeah, just quickly, thanks again, Brian, so much. And of course, thank you, Taylor, for being the most wonderful partner ever on BookTube. So thank you for allowing me to do this with you. Yeah, PL Stewart, everything's at PL Stewart rates, social media wise. Website's plstewart.com. John King Saga, 5 books out. A Pack of Wolves, the most recent one. But A Black Dragon on Red is coming out soon. And the cover reveal is tomorrow at 1 p.m. on my channel with the awesome Blaze and Coda. Speaking of awesome community members, Blaze and Coda, great reviewer from Under the Radar book. So we get to reveal the cover tomorrow. So if you're interested in that, check us out at 1 p.m. And of course, the YouTube channel, John King Saga, where I get to do page chewing with my amazing partner, and also 6 Elemental interviews, another interview feature that I do, primarily focusing on the indie side. So, thank you.
You guys are frozen on my end, but can you hear or see me? Is it just me?
Yep, you're back.
I can see you. Yeah, you're good.
Yeah, you can hear. Yep, you're good.
All right. If you can hear and see me, then I'll just finish out. So thank you, everyone who's in the chat, for joining us today. You guys being in the chat and interacting with us is what makes page chewing what it is. That and the lovely guests like Brian here as well. So my name is Taylor. My channel is Made Between the Pages. You can see it written here. And I've taken a bit of hiatus for the past year and have now recently come back and making videos. So I would love to see you over there. But once again, thank you to everyone who's here. I think I froze, so fingers crossed that this finishes out. And we look forward to seeing you on the next page chewing episode. Maybe.
That sounds good. Thank you.
Take care.